Thank you all for coming. I'd like to call us to order here. Till we get organized, I guess I'm going to take the role of just getting started here today. I can't thank you all enough individually for agreeing to serve on the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Commission. We've already affectionately known to call it the HARC to save time. By the way, this is a public meeting, and when we get together, it will be publicly noticed. The public is welcome to attend, and we're even live streaming the event, the meeting, I guess on Facebook or our YouTube channel. So the public can watch now, and they can even come back later and watch it. These are our little microphones for those who hadn't used them before, and all you got to do is on the right to activate, a little green light comes on, and that really helps us not only to hear each other. There's a little speaker system here, but it also greatly helps the clerk's office, because they will actually be taking minutes of our meetings, and as I said, it's a public meeting. So I would like to open, I think very appropriately, with a prayer and invocation, and Mr. Harris has agreed to say a little prayer to get us started. Jerome?
Shall we pray? Our Father, our God, how good and wonderful thy name is in all the earth. Your word tells us how good and wonderful it is for brothers and sisters to dwell together in unity. And we thank you for this opportunity to come together as a body. We ask that you govern our hearts and minds, our words, open us to listening. We are committed individually and collectively to uplift your kingdom, but also the city of Charleston. We thank you for everyone that's here, and let what we do be pleasing in thy sight. And whatever we do, we'll continue to give your name honor, glory, and praise. It's in the name of the one I call Jesus Christ, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Jerome. So if I may, just to get us started, do a little round robin here. Rather than me introducing everyone, let's take a couple of minutes and introduce ourselves. I think that would be appropriate. Welcome, by the way. Thank you for joining us. And Carol, could we start with you? And when you hit the button and it turns green, it still helps to get a little close to the microphone for it to pick you up. Carol Fry.
My name is Carol Fry, and I'm a resident of West Ashley here in Charleston. I was born in Kingstree, South Carolina, raised in Georgetown, South Carolina, but then left the state for 40 plus years, coming back in 2013 after retirement. And I'm married. My wife Jan's here, and we have 2 adult children who both also live in Charleston, and 2 grandchildren. So that's a quick review of myself.
We call that the elevator speech. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Burl Dozier. I'm a lifelong resident of West Ashley. Never left, went to Citadel here, so my wife calls me a homebody, but I like it here. I have 3 children, all 2 are Clemson grads. 1 will be a Clemson grad next year, fingers crossed. I have an industrial supply company. I've been doing that for 27 years in Hanahan.
Have you with us, council member?
Hey, y'all. My name is Stephen Bowden. I live out in Shadow Moss in West Ashley. I have been on council since January. I was elected in November. We were just talking, I have a 3-month-old child, almost 3-month-old child. And I sort of come to this work through being inspired by many other folks where I work at the Public Defender's Office. And so I am really looking forward to getting started with y'all and digging into all of the things that our city desperately needs. So thank you all very much for serving.
Thank you.
And good afternoon, I'm Bob Simmons. Actually born and raised in Lexington, Kentucky, moved to Charleston when I was 13, grew up downtown, went off to school and then started my career in public radio. Wasn't much future in that, so I ended up going into federal data information and analysis and retired out of that, semi-retired. Still do a little work for the census and the occasional poll manager. So still recovering from Tuesday, but live West Ashley now and 2 children, 1 in DC, 1 here. And hopefully happy to be here.
Great. Thank you, Bob.
Hi, I'm Carol Jackson. I'm sort of the opposite of Carol and a lot of the people that I've met along the way. I never lived in Charleston until I was retired. My husband and I schemed about how to move here probably for about 25 years before we were able to accomplish it. Our daughter went to College of Charleston, which I considered, sort of the stepping stone along the way in the early 2000s. And then 15 or not even quite 12 years later, she returned to be on faculty. So that's what we called our stake in the ground, even though we still had to wait a few more years to get rid of the Great Recession that was plaguing DC and my husband's small business career. I feel very strongly as a Midwesterner that we had civil rights challenges in our country, no matter what region, but I've always been interested in how they have played out in the South. My first job to fall in love with Charleston was with the National Trust for Historic Preservation in the early 80s. And I think that was a time that sort of began the groundswell of changes that we're all experiencing now as a society. So I'm looking forward to digging in with this group.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Jerry Harris, great grandson of Simeon Pinckney, a veteran of the Civil War, the 21st U.S. Colored Troops. My mom was a 1936 graduate of Burke High School. She left here to go for a summer trip before going to college with my dad in Harlem. And she didn't move back to 1972. I've been coming, in the current parlance, I've been coming here. I've been coming here since 1947 in my mom's summit. And since relocating to Charleston in 2017, I've been active with the Charleston area Justice Ministry, the International African American Museum, the mayor appointed me to the Community Police Advisory Council and had the pleasure of serving on the 90-day, turned out to be more than 90-day Special Commission on Equity and Inclusion, and look forward to working with you going forward.
Thank you, Jerome.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Kim Long, and I also live in West Ashley. I am a Southerner through and through, starting in Georgia, Alabama, Florida. Took a detour to Mexico for 7 years, and then Charleston. And I'm so happy to live in Charleston. It's such a wonderful place. And as an educator, I worked all the way from early childhood to higher ed administration. And now I am a history buff. So Charleston is just the place for me for the research I'm enjoying doing. And lately I've been busy with the President's Council on Service and Civic Participation, among some other national things. But it gives me great pleasure to serve on this group to look at ways that we can improve our community through equity and fairness. I'm a humanist, so I am looking forward to our discussions.
Good afternoon. My name is Alvin Thomas Johnson, Jr. I'm also from West Ashley. I got to Charleston via the Citadel in 1999. I thought that I hated Charleston, but in actuality, I hated my time at the Citadel. It wasn't until I graduated that I realized that Charleston was a beautiful place, is a beautiful place. If I had to describe Charleston, to me, it's like my Nineveh. If you're familiar with the city of Nineveh in the Bible and Jonah, Jonah was given direction to go to Nineveh, but he tried to go anywhere and everywhere, but ended up in Nineveh. So this is where I'm supposed to be, and this is the work that I know that God has me to do. So I look forward to serving with each and every one of you. You will have my phone number. I will be available 24/7, 365. So I look forward to working with each and every one of you here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Alvin. Jason Saccharin, council member, 2 years now, relatively new, and also former chair for our previous commission, EIRC commission that I served with Jerry and Carol and Elvin, and I think that was it. The mayor obviously was on. Born and raised in upstate New York, been here since 2001. Graduate school brought me here. The weather and the way of life has kept me here. 2 kids, both go to public schools. I'm a small business owner and enjoy Charleston, but particularly this work, where we are in Charleston at this point in our history. I think this is critical work that we need to dig into. And this is a long time coming to get this commission up and running. So I just want to thank everyone here that has been involved with getting us to this point. We've got some work ahead of us, but I'm here. You've got my contact information, much like Elvin. I'm very available. All my constituents can reach me by phone, email, text, sometimes door knocks. So I just want to let you all know I'm accessible if you have any questions, and I'm happy to serve.
Hi, y'all. My name is Sharon Milligan, and I was thrilled to be asked to be on this committee or this commission. However, having just a brief introduction to everyone, I am truly honored. So it's clear that we're in the midst of people who are passionate and committed and believe in making a difference, and that's pretty wonderful. I grew up in Columbia, went to the College of Charleston, got into financial services, and it was I don't know how it happened, but it was a wild ride. I was asked to move all across the country, and I will say the only thing you could impress those daggum New Yorkers with was that and this accent and wearing pale clothes and not wearing black all the time, I didn't fit in at all, but I impressed it by saying I went to the College of Charleston. So it was, people are impressed with this city and what it stands for. It is truly a beacon out there and a point of light for folks to look to. This is what graciousness is all about, and that's what I think we're here to protect. So thank you all. I live on Daniel Island. After all these, it was 9 corporate moves across the country, finally back in the South, and just moved with my husband a year and a half ago to Daniel Island and retired, 2 months ago. So life is good, and it's an honor to know you all. Thank you.
Congratulations, welcome. And I wanted to introduce, if you don't know him, Mike Wack, who's on my staff. And Mike is going to be helping just with any coordination up to the time when we get a new candidate for Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Manager, which is someone that we will be hiring soon. In fact, that's the one kind of business thing on our agenda. Our former manager, she left us a couple of months ago. We've posted her job, have some applications in, and I wanted to get some input from this commission, since this staff person will be basically helping manage the commission, and on an advisory basis, get some input from y'all on that hire. So I'm not actually a member of the commission per the ordinance. Isn't that right, Julia? So I've just made an appointment to the commission, as did the other council members who don't serve. But do you all mind if I share a little bit of my story? So sometimes I get choked up a little bit about it, so pardon me if that happens, but I'm a proud Charlestonian, born right here in the Holy City, as we're known, and as I'd like to have us live up to that name as mayor. And I sometimes say that I was culturally deprived. It's kind of a tongue-in-cheek comment, but my parents moved to Orangeburg, South Carolina, when I was going into the third grade. My mother had grown up there, and my granddad passed away, and he had a viable business up there that my dad bought, and so we moved up there in 1963. But my mother was, having grown up there, she was like determined that they were not going to live in Orangeburg. They were going to come back to Charleston just as soon as they could. They kept all their social obligations and clubs and card games and everything. It was amazing what they kept up. And as soon as my older brother got out of law school and was able to run the business, it was literally the next day the moving truck was there and they moved back to Charleston. But what was significant, among other things, was in 1968, and I would have been in the 8th grade, and the Orangeburg Massacre occurred, a racial massacre. 3 were killed and dozens other wounded at South Carolina State College, we called it at the time. And thankfully, I'm blessed that I feel a beautiful example about racial conciliation by my own parents. My mother went on the board of South Carolina State after that incident. My father went on the board of Claflin University, and they were, I would say, 2 of the most active citizens of Charleston, at least white citizens, that helped to bring that community back together at that time. And I was, as I mentioned, in the 8th grade. So it was quite a role model for me, just watching my parents in action. Many of those meetings after the massacre happened in the library of my house, community meetings. So that was quite an experience for me and made a deep impression. And they were also active, public servants in other ways. So I guess later on in life, when the time came and I offered myself to run for mayor of the city of Charleston, something that I had aspired to for some years, how terribly ironic that during my campaign that there was a racial massacre in Charleston, South Carolina, 7 years ago tomorrow. And it was so powerful to my spirit that despite the fact that, on the surface, much progress had occurred with race relations and civil rights in my lifetime, that here I was running for mayor of my hometown, and a racial massacre had occurred almost 50 years after one had occurred when I was a student in the 8th grade in Orangeburg. And it certainly left me with a powerful conviction that there was still much work to be done. And it was that event here 7 years ago that led us on a journey as a city and a city council to really take a deeper dive and look into our past of nearly 350 years at that time of where we had journeyed as a city and a society in terms of race relations and conciliation. And by the way, it was purposeful. Normally you use the word reconciliation, right? Like getting people back together. It was purposeful that we use the term conciliation instead, because someone aptly noted, well, how do you bring people back together if they ain't ever really been together before? And that was a kind of compelling point and led to the name that we have, the City of Charleston Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Commission. Anyway, that journey led us to an apology that we, City Council passed, I forget, 4 years ago now, Carol. And we shared some of the things that this city did as a legal entity, as a corporation, not the citizens, but that the corporation of the city of Charleston, founded in 1783, actually did in its history to promulgate and support the institution of slavery and direct discrimination, not only just leading up to the Civil War and when we were intricately as a city involved in the administration of slavery, but thereafter and after Reconstruction, when Jim Crow laws and legalized discrimination occurred. So our history, despite our moniker of being the holy city, was deeply tied with racism and slavery and discrimination. And so I'm going to take just another minute, and I know you've all gotten a copy of the ordinance that established us, but I did want to share after that personal recount that the purpose of why we're here together is to promote equity, inclusion, and racial conciliation through meetings, presentations, and research regarding all forms of institutional and community discrimination, and assist in implementing any recommendation from the mayor and council through its standing committees to the public, assist with education and implementation of any directive from council, equity for the purpose of HARC's duties and responsibilities shall be defined as the guarantee of fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement, while at the same time striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented full participation of some groups. That's the mission. Our duties and responsibilities will be to provide myself, the mayor and city council, on development of a termed racial equity framework to serve as a tool and processes to analyze, influence, and improve internal decision-making in a way that supports racial equity within the city as an organization and through the services, the things we do. To assist city staff and participate in conjunction with city and public engagement, education, and outreach activities that promote equity, inclusion, racial conciliation, and engagement. To provide education and outreach support to establish programs and organizations in the community to promote a more inclusive and equitable city. I'm not going to read them all, but I'm going to read just a few more. At the direction of the mayor and council, to meet and collaborate with community partners such as educational institutions, civil rights organizations, business organizations, local chambers of commerce, Charleston Regional Development Alliance, and Low Country Local First for input and assistance towards its goals. And I think that's a very important mission statement, is for this commission to be connecting with other organizations in the community. I know one of the kind of groundwork done for the special commission was in fact a report that many of you may have seen that was done by the Avery Center at the College of Charleston. I highly recommend that y'all reestablish that connection with the Avery Center, with groups like the NAACP, with groups like the Chamber of Commerce and the CRDA, because one of the goals that I would have and was of the special commission is to have a focus on economic opportunities in our city for minority businesses. And I'm proud to say that I really think the Chamber of Commerce, the Charleston Metro Chamber of Commerce, has really come a long way in the last year or so. They're right now have a accelerator program for minority businesses and are going to roll out a basic a business promotion advocacy for minority businesses. So they are a great group to network with. So moving on, that you will fully vet whether to become a community relations council in partnership with the South Carolina Human Affairs Commission. So this is a commission that was set up by Governor John West after the Orangeburg Massacre. It was really in reaction to that event back in 1968. And interestingly, Congressman Jim Clyburn was, I believe, the first staff member commissioner of the South Carolina Human Affairs Commission. And he held that position for, I think, about 10 or 15 years before he got into elected office. So they have their own network of councils that they may establish to help monitor equity, inclusion and diversity, and even look specifically at fairness in housing and other matters like that. So we have an opportunity to kind of join forces with them, or maybe officially become a council of the South Carolina Human Affairs Commission. So one of the charges is for y'all to take a deep dive. Does that make sense for us as a city and for this commission to recommend that to council? And we look forward to hearing y'all's recommendation on that. To report annually back to the city council on your work. So we want some accountability, so to speak. We're not a fierce taskmaster, but this, y'all, is a real commitment to public service, and that's why I'm so thankful for your willingness to serve. So we want to get an annual report. And finally, the last one I'll mention is assist in the review and provide recommendations in any other areas of equity, inclusion, racial conciliation as needed. So as things come along in the community that you think need review, you certainly are free to look at them. And I may have missed one or two that was important. I guess, let me go back for 1 second here, because the ordinance did address the special commission and the report that they came up with 125 recommendations that was not accepted by city council, although the mayor, I did receive those recommendations and have begun to pass some of those along as appropriate to city council committee. But by affirming the creation of this standing commission to be called the Human Affairs Racial Conciliation Commission, this council will not only acknowledge the work that was put into that report, but ensure that its stated purpose, the purpose to eliminate the vestiges of Jim Crow and slavery in our city, is heard and fulfilled with patience and fortitude. So it does acknowledge those recommendations, and we certainly, you certainly may use those recommendations as kind of a groundwork that has already been done to review and pass those recommendations on as you see fit to city council. So that's my big introduction and thanks. And at this point, the matter of having a chairperson and vice chair or officers of this commission, frankly, was not outlined in the ordinance itself. A lot of times we'll say that the mayor gets to choose somebody to be the chair. It's not addressed in the ordinance, so I think the fair thing to do is to allow y'all to select somebody to lead you, or maybe somebody will volunteer. I would offer this suggestion though, since that Councilmember Saccharin had served as one of the founding co-chairs, that maybe until y'all get to know each other a little better and work together a little bit, that Councilmember Saccharin kind of take that role on. If you want to officially make that action, you can, but if you just want to do it on a temporary basis, that's all up to you. Councilmember Jackson, I see your hand.
Former Councilmember Jackson. Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I think that we would certainly benefit, this is my personal opinion, from Councilmember Saccharin's experience in being a co-chair to the year-plus long effort that created the special commission's report. I think we've also talked, some of us who've seen this coming for more months than some of our newer appointees, that because we don't have a manager and we don't know each other and we've got a lot of serious truth telling and hard work to do, that I would like to suggest or make a motion, if it needs to be that formal, that whoever we ask to lead us today would be on an interim basis until our manager is hired and settled in. So maybe by the end of the year, we'll feel more comfortable as a group electing a chair and a vice chair that then would serve probably, I think our term is 3 years, right? And then renewable. So that would be my recommendation, and I'm happy to make that as a motion if you think that should be for the record.
Have a second. Anybody want to talk about that? Y'all all good? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? You got it. That means I can go home now. No. I am due to make a proclamation at 6 o'clock, so I don't even know how long I took with that introduction, but about quarter till or 10 till I do need to slip off. And so congratulations. And Councilmember Saccharin, Mr. Chairman, it's up to you.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for the vote of confidence. I guess the next order of business is trying to appoint an interim vice chair. I'd like to make a motion, or at least have a discussion first, to recommend either Elvin Johnson or Jerome Harris for that, seeing as though they also did serve. Again, this is an interim position. I don't know if we want to have a discussion, or Elvin?
Well, I was actually going to make a motion that I was going to nominate Jerry Harris to be the interim vice chair. Just understanding all of the work that he put in, just to see that we got here today. I really enjoyed working with him on the special commission that was 90 days, but yet a year. So just to see us pick up from where we left off, I think that it just makes sense, in my opinion, that Jerry Harris I would like to nominate Jerry Harris for the interim vice chair position for HARC.
Okay, any other discussion, or?
I'd just like to point out that not that anybody intended to let this commission languish after it was created, but it was Mr. Harris who certainly pulled me aside after a city council meeting and came to city council meetings when this wasn't on the agenda, and sort of lit a fire under people, or kept that fire lit under people. So I just couldn't agree more that I think it's totally appropriate to name you interim vice chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair. As long as we're talking about December 31st, we're good.
All right. Any other discussion around this item?
Mr. Chair, and we just need a second.
Yep. The motion is to appoint Jerry Harris vice chair until, I'd like to make sure that we have an until date.
I was just going to suggest that since they're doing 3-year terms, that 6 months might be a nice round number to use, and that might get us done before Christmas.
All right, perfect. So both chair and vice chair will serve interim for six months.
I'll make a second.
I have a second on that. All right. I think that'll pass, right? Yes. Anything else? Any discussion on that at all? We're good. So that's the election of chair and vice chair. So that's good. We've got that checked off the list for this evening. Before we begin, as chair and certainly Carol can weigh in. And the other thing I'd like to, and this is a norm we use in special commission, is calling each other by our first names. It's going to be much easier for us to work. And I think it's going to create a situation where we are all equals. I don't want to be a council member when I'm in this role. I want to be Jason. So I would ask you all to call me by my first name, and if I can respectfully call you by your first name. So Carol, Elvin, and Jerry, one of the challenges we had with the special commission is we had 90 days. So everything was fast forwarded. So as I look back at those first 90 days, there were some things that I learned, and I would hope that, Jerry and Carol and Elvin would weigh in. We didn't have time to get to know each other, number one. And we didn't have time to talk about common language. A lot of terms were being tossed around that, frankly, I was not aware of, or I didn't have a full understanding of. So I think we need to be intentional about the terms we are using and all be on the same page around those terms. As being a chair, and Carol can attest, I don't really want to mince words. A lot of terms were co-opted to be weaponized, and I want us all to understand what those terms mean. So I think we all need to be trusting each other to be on the same page around those terms. And if that takes a meeting or two, then it takes a meeting or two. I think the process is more important in many ways than some of the results. If we don't trust each other and we can't have honest discussions, then this commission really is just window dressing. And I will say this, there are people watching right now. They'll be tweeting and social media posting and Facebooking about what we did and didn't do. And that's going to happen. And we didn't acknowledge that the first time. Well, guess what? They're not in the room. We are. So I'm asking you all, as your chair, to have the respect and maturity and authenticity to have a conversation, even if you feel it might upset someone in the room. Because we are talking about issues that are, frankly, as a white council member, I'm going to be honest, I sometimes don't know how to say things. But that's part of our journey together. And understanding that we all come from different places, not just racially, we all have different life stories. And I think it's important to acknowledge that our different life stories create different prisms for us and how we see the world. So all I'm asking us is as we take this journey together, to realize and acknowledge that people are going to nitpick. They're going to call us names. They're going to say we're not moving fast enough or moving too slow. And just have that patience, know that this group is going to be the group that works forward in progress. And to be okay with saying things that one of us might call you out on. And it is a public meeting. And another thing that I will say, frankly, is that was a challenge to have these discussions in a public setting. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, make sure that that's on the table. I know it's going to take us some time to get to that point where we're comfortable with each other, but I hope we can get there. Any questions at all? Jerry?
And I think what you're saying about a group coming together, bonding and storming and norming and going through that process. And many folks around the table have been through in various situations that is important. The forward and I believe introduction to the special commission report has some language, some definitions. I suggest that our homework be to look at those, right, and come back and discuss that in the context that moves us, forward in that regard. Not saying the recommendations, we're looking at the discussion of the context and the proposed language to see whether or not that becomes part of our lexicon. I just suggest that as a piece of homework.
Thank you, Jaron. And then, so Vice Chair, that's a great piece of advice. In addition to that, as we build out the meetings, I think it'd be very critical to have someone from the outside come in and explain some of the terms. I just finished the Diversity and Inclusion Fellowship with our state I can't remember, Furman Institute. And that was a great experience for me. But coming in, I had an impression of what that curriculum was going to be like. So when you hear the word diversity and equity, my interpretation was one thing, but what I heard was completely different. The point of that is that folks from all around the state were on these calls, and we spent 6 months together. And you better be true that the first couple of meetings, I could tell by people's faces, they were very hesitant to talk. But by month 2, month 3, we were having really in-depth conversations, and I learned a whole lot about my viewpoints of the world as well as others. So I think it's critically important that we get some third party or someone else to come in also to provide some of that framework for us. So we're all working from the same playbook. And one last thing that I will acknowledge. We are not going to agree. And that's why we're here. We're here because we are diverse in our thoughts, we're diverse in our work experiences. So for all of us to agree would be foolish. I just want to make sure that we're respectful, that we articulate our positions in a mature and respectful way, but also understand that we're coming from a common sense of language on some issues. So that's all I had. Anything else on 1, 2, or 3 for today? Anyone else want to chime in? Jerry?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry. Would you like any of us to recommend, for example, entities or groups that might provide that training and make that another piece of assignment if you have an organization or entity that you're aware of works with organization development, startup boards and the like, that you've worked with in the past that you think might fit this to pass that on to the chair, and we can begin to move that, particularly since we don't have a staff person to do that at this point.
So just for some direction, so with that communication, come to me and Mr. Wack for the interim until we get the manager hired. So if you want to send that to me and Mr. Wack, we can make sure that that group or entity does present at some point. The other thing I did want to do today was get from you all, we're supposed to meet monthly. I'm glad we met today. Obviously that today is the kickoff, but I don't want to go too long before we meet again. So what is the appetite to schedule a meeting in July? All good? Okay. So we will schedule a meeting in July, one in August, and moving forward, we'll have a monthly meeting. And obviously once the manager gets hired, he or she will be able to catch up because we've already done some work, but I think we can spend the next couple of meetings building a foundation of knowledge and kind of content knowledge for us. Yes, Carol.
Just one little point that. Sorry, Jason. Just a procedural point. We have a kind of a unique situation here, almost like, in grade school when, you had 10 Johnsons and 4 Smiths, and we have 2 Carols on this council. And so I'm not sure, I would suggest maybe that you refer to me as Carol E.
All right, Carol E.
And that way, when someone says, well, Carol, what do you think? If it's Carol, it's that Carol. Right. If it's Carol E, it's this Carol.
All right, I think that's
right. That'll really confuse them. So again, a minor point, but that just might be helpful as a convention to make sure we don't have any misinterpretation of who a question is addressed to or whatever.
Duly noted, Carol E.
Is that right?
I go by Burl.
Burl. All right.
So Carol J and Carol E.
Yeah.
Thank you. That makes sense. Next on the agenda is the selection of our 3-member review committee to interview the final candidates for the Human Affairs and Racial Conciliation Manager. Just want to share some context, and if the mayor wants to chime in or Mr. Wack wants to chime in, it's my understanding that this 3-person review committee is not going to have a final hiring decision. We will be able to meet with the candidates. I believe there are 3 at this point. Meet with them, interview them, and then rank order them and give those recommendations to the mayor. The mayor ultimately has the final decision on that hiring. That's correct. Just want to make sure I'm not saying anything inappropriate. So that's where we are on that. So tonight we need to try to figure out either if anyone wants to volunteer to be on that 3-member. If not, from those volunteers, I can make a decision over the next couple of days and provide those names to the mayor. but do I have any volunteers to sit on that review committee? So Elvin, Kim, Carol, Jay. Anyone else? Anyone else? Okay.
Sorry. Assuming everybody here's got experience reviewing lots of resumes. Although I guess we're only 3, but still.
I mean, if you want to throw your hat in, please do.
Well, I just noted, don't we have a businessman down here? That, I don't,
He doesn't-
never mind.
You're being voluntold, right? Right. So, right, go ahead. Yes, Vice Chair.
Yeah, I think if you've got your three folks, it would be helpful to share with them the job description.
Yeah.
So that they can begin to, and actually probably we should share it with the entire.
And the timeline would be.
And the timeline,
just in
yeah.
case we're-
So I do have a question for council. Here's another one of the things that we didn't do well with the special commission. If we create an email list, an email group, could I send out information to our group? Could I send an email? So I have everyone's email. Could I send an email out to the entire group with the documentation that we're providing? Okay. Just want to make sure that, okay. That was a challenge before. We just didn't, so this group really should be, receiving information all at the same time, all in a timely fashion. So I'll make sure that information gets out to you all.
Y'all kindly excuse me, I think you're in good hands and off to a great start.
Thanks, Mayor.
Well, what we'll try to do is, who's gonna be on the committee? And we'll have HR get in touch with those members and try to figure out what works for you. They'll all be done by
we'd love to hire, I would think we'd love to hire somebody as quickly as we possibly can. And so, if we could do these next week, that'd be terrific.
Thank you, Carol. So just to reiterate, the candidates have been identified. You've already spoken to the 3 candidates.
We've gone through a process where Mike, Julia, and I interviewed a whole bunch of candidates, ranked them all, and giving you the top 3 in terms of our rankings. But those are just our rankings to get to those 3. And now it's up to you all to interview them and make recommendations to the mayor.
Thank you, Rick. Melvin.
Quick question. Are we on first name basis too?
Rick, yeah.
Okay, Rick. How soon can you get us the information on the 3 candidates? I mean, because if we're going to have to try to have these interviews in between now, tomorrow's Friday.
Sure, we can get you their resumes tomorrow. So what we'll do is we'll send out the job description and the resumes as Mike will get those to you tomorrow. And good luck.
So the volunteers I had that will likely serve are Elvin, Kim, and Carol. That's the name. So Elvin, Kim, and Carol. So we'll get the job description as well as the 3 candidates to you tomorrow. Given the nature of our job market right now, I'm glad we're going to be doing this next week. We don't want to lose potentially one of these candidates to another offer.
And Mr. Chair, I think we need a motion and a second and a vote just on those review panel members.
So can I hear a motion to appoint Elvin Johnson, Kim Long, and Carol Jackson to second? I'm hearing nothing else. That motion passes.
We just need to take the vote for the.
Take a voice vote. All in favor? Any nays? Thank you, Jennifer. I'm not quite the Carl Brady parliamentarian, but I'm learning. I need Carl over here. Anyways. So after that, we are up for discussion. Is there anything that you all want to discuss today? Anything that you've been thinking about coming into today's meeting? It is 5:50.
I do have one request. Since we are working on first name basis and some of us are not as sharp as maybe we were 20 years ago, could we please get name tags and people write their name large so we can read it? That would be very helpful.
I think we can manage some name
Thank you.
tags. So Carol E and Carol J will not get confused. Yes. We'll get new name placards. I'm joking. Anything else for discussion today? Yes, Stephen.
So one sort of interesting timing that we're meeting today, there was a really great documentary released on Netflix in the past couple of days. For anybody watching at home, I know that's probably a limited group of folks, but and all of us, actually parts of it focus on Charleston. It is called Who We Are. And it's by a gentleman named Jeffrey Robinson, who worked for the ACLU for a number of years, was a criminal defense lawyer, somebody who I was fortunate enough to get sort of a pre-screening of this documentary when I was at the National Defense Trial College or whatever it is they call it, where he's given this presentation for a number of years. And it's basically a PowerPoint that he goes through, and he's a very powerful speaker. He is a very even-handed individual. I just happened to watch it last night because I saw that it came on, and I kind of knew that it was coming. But I strongly recommend that to anybody, just sort of as a primer for what we're doing here, and it just sort of dovetails with this work. But also, if like me, we've been thinking of some of the recommendations in the special commissions report that are of particular interest to us. Should we wait until somebody is hired as a manager, or should we start getting you those ideas so we can kind of set some priorities?
My personal feeling is I think we need to spend some time getting to know each other and establishing some ground rules around language. I think the recommendations are there, and we will get to the recommendations, but I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves. And also, in addition, I think we've got a manager that's going to be on board, hopefully in the next 2 months. So he or she may have some opinions on that. But if there are, to Stephen's point, if there are recommendations in the report that you feel very strongly about, I don't think the next meeting is the time, but perhaps the meeting after that, we can have that discussion around that. That's the will of the group. Is that all right? Yeah. Yeah. So the other thing that we all can send out to you is the final report. So right now on the list is the job descriptions, the candidates, and the final report.
Not that the work that the Cultural and History Committee did is not excellent, and all of the details that they put into their appendices, but their appendixes, I think they have more than one, total like 500 pages. So if you send it out without the appendices, then everyone can receive it in an email as opposed to having to do a link and things like that.
All right. Carol E.
Yes, thank you, Jason. Just for planning purposes, I would like for us to maybe spend just a minute or two about expectations around meeting length. Now, I know we can't plan that, to the minute, but I've been to a lot of meetings in my career, and I've wasted a lot of time in a lot of meetings in my career. And, discussion and learning the things we need to learn is not a waste of time, but I would like to understand, are we going to target to hold meetings to 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours? What is the expectation of the group in terms of how much time we're going to spend in these meetings?
That's a good question, Carol E. I don't remember what our special commission meetings, it was 90 minutes or 2 hours, I can't remember. But
we averaged about 90 minutes.
Yeah, I would say, and as chair, for as long as I'm chair, I'm going to make sure that we stick to that because I want to be respectful of our time. Typically, we're going to be meeting at this point, so it's going to be after work for many of us. So let's just start with the 90 minutes. And we will stick to that 90 minutes. And if we don't finish the agenda in 90 minutes, well, then we got to move faster next time.
Great. Thank you, Jason.
And Bob Simmons again. Is this a good time and day of the week for everybody? I mean, it works for me, but I figured it's a good time to say, hey,
That's a good question. What I was going to recommend at some point during this discussion was Mr. Wack send out our meeting dates up until December. We're all busy and we all work and we're all professionals. It'd be very helpful for, at least for me, to know what those meeting dates are. And I guess this goes back to your question. This is a good time for me. I'm not sure the rest of the commission. Are there certain days that don't work? Obviously, Fridays are tough, right? Tuesdays are horrible. Tuesdays typically could be a conflict for us because we've got council. So that leaves Wednesday and Thursdays and Mondays. Wednesday's not good. Carol's, all right. All right, looks like Elvin, Thursdays are kind of percolating up. Today is Thursday.
And
All right,
Mr. Chair,
so Mr. Wack?
I was just going to say the third Thursday of the month is also the meeting of community development, which met earlier today. It was a virtual meeting, but if this is a good time for everyone, we could set that as like the regular meeting date for HARP as the third Thursday at 5.
Perfect. Is that good for everybody? Do we need a motion for that or that's?
No.
Okay.
That's good.
Jerry?
A couple of things rattling around my head. Our business meetings, our regular meetings, the hour and a half, when we get in conversation about the possibility of some team developmental work, that might need to expand that time frame.
Yes.
So I just want to have that in people's heads. The other thing I would suggest, something that I've learned in the past 9 months or so coming to council meetings, is that the city council will be discussing these issues, things that touch affordable housing issues. We have a discussion. Soon the council will be dealing with questions of budgets and things of that nature. So there may be, as things percolate to the top of our agenda, a need for us to pay some attention to what the council is talking about to see, one, whether or not they're asking for our advice and counsel on anything, okay, or whether or not we're talking about something that they're talking about that could be helpful to bring some more attention. The other thing that I'll raise is that during the special commission for a time frame, we made effort to hear the voices of people who were not on the council, okay, but we were not very successful in terms of doing that. So as we think about our culture, as we bond with ourselves, we need to be thinking about what communities and how we hear the communities and the experts, influencers and the like, so that this is not an echo chamber amongst ourselves, but rather something that's truly engaging the community.
So are you suggesting, Jerry, that maybe in the future we would task ourselves with being more like a traveling roadshow and going to other?
Whatever strategy seemed to make sense that matches our capacity.
That makes a lot of sense to me personally.
We can talk, we can keep going. I'm joking. If there's nothing else and there's no more business to come before tonight's first HARC Commission meeting, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.